It's time to settle with Uncle Sam. But no one likes to pay taxes. We do it anyway. Well, tonight you're going to meet a man who says that there is a way to avoid paying taxes for years and years.
Yeah, and his message has grabbed the attention of many wealthy Americans and the IRS. What does he know about taxes that you don't? Is he leading people down the path to riches or to federal court? To find out, ABC's chief investigative correspondent, Brian Ross, followed the money south.
A balmy night at a luxury hotel in the resort town of Cancun, Mexico. And down on the beach, it's time for cocktails for some 300 well-off Americans and an undercover camera team from 2020. All here to learn of what is being promised as a secret but legal way to avoid taxes and the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS.
That was a big joke we had when we came down here. I wonder how many IRS agents come down.
At the center of it all is the man in the tie, a man by the name of Jerome Schneider, the man people at this party came a long way and paid several $1,000s to hear.
You're going to get information that only an elite few enjoy. May I introduce Jerome Schneider?
Over the last 20 years, Schneider has made a career out of helping rich Americans move their money out of the United States offshore.
Good morning, all. How you doing today? Everybody up?
So they can beat, or some officials say, cheat the IRS.
How many people here are already offshore, are already doing something offshore? Good. I like that.
What he's doing is preying on the wishes and dreams of people who think that there's a way out of the tax system.
Jack Blum is a consultant to the IRS on offshore tax evasion schemes and a partner in a Washington law firm that has represented ABC News employees, including this correspondent. Blum says what Schneider and others like him are doing is costing the U.S. Treasury and U.S. taxpayers billions of dollars.
It's everybody who's paying his taxes who's victimized by this. They wind up paying a higher tax rate because these people have walked.
Schneider is an American citizen, but he operates just across the U.S. border in Vancouver, Canada.
Perfect. Okay.
Serving as what he calls a financial consultant to wealthy Americans. Clients attracted by his book, Offshore Money Havens, as well as flattering newspaper articles like this one in USA Today and full-page ads in airline magazines.
I'm excited about doing this because I help the IRS more than ever.
You help the IRS?
Absolutely. We've set people straight as far as what their reporting requirements are and what they need to know about doing this legally.
It's an alluring, exotic world of faraway islands, secretive bank laws, and no taxes. Something described as only for the wealthy, as we were welcomed in Cancun by Schneider's lawyer, Eric Whitmire.
This is such a great deal. Why doesn't everybody do this?
Because they don't have the money to. You know, 90% of the population in the United States has a family income of under $45,000. They can't even come to Cancun.
And so, over the next 3 days, despite a beautiful beach and crystal clear water, some 300 Americans chose to spend their time inside this windowless ballroom, listening to Jerome Schneider tell them how to keep their millions away from the tax man.
Mr. IRS gets 39.6% of all of our money. Okay?
Schneider's way around that seems quite ingenious, starting with the American taxpayer setting up a bank on a far-off island as a place to keep money quietly and safely away from the IRS for years and years.
Through some of the offshore banking laws that are available today, you are able to set up a bank for several $1,000s to be able to have it qualify as a real bank, to be able to operate as what I call a cubicle bank.
In reality, as we learned in our 2020 investigation, the bank need be little more than a mailing address. The idea is to take advantage of the fact that a true foreign bank doesn't pay any U.S. tax. Here's how it works. If an American taxpayer moves $1 million to Schneider to invest and makes a 10% profit of $100,000 in a year, normally that would mean a U.S. tax bill due of $30,000 to $40,000. But under Schneider's guidance, the profit would appear to belong to the bank on the faraway island, and the U.S. taxpayer doesn't pay a penny unless he later cashes in his holdings. All made possible, we were told in Cancun, by a thick pile of paper.
You get a banking license, a piece of paper. You get corporate documents. You get the articles of association, memorandum of association, the shares of stock. There's no little building like this with a drive-in window. Nobody's going to get a toaster when they make a deposit. There's no tellers. There's none of that.
It was banks much like these which have put Schneider in the middle of several international banking scandals, most notably on the Caribbean island of Montserrat. In 1989, the government there revoked dozens of bank licenses Schneider had helped to arrange. A number of them ended up being used by drug dealers, which Schneider denied knowing.
That gets down to Nauru.
But now Schneider has found a new place to do business, the tiny island country of Nauru in the South Pacific.
And basically, you've got a large deposit of bird guano. All right, not a good place to visit.
Nauru literally is an island built on bird droppings, located in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, the third smallest country in the world. But it has become a hotspot for international tax lawyers, as a few $1,000s here will buy a piece of paper with an official seal that constitutes a bank license. In the eyes of some American officials, more like a license to beat the IRS. Lawyer Whitmire says it's a good business.
I have Nauru banks. I've owned many of them. The reason I've owned many is I often, once I get my banking license, I sell them to other people because I inevitably have somebody that comes to me who needs a bank yesterday.
Buying and selling bank licenses like used cars isn't allowed even under the lenient laws of Nauru. But in a letter to 2020, Whitmire denied saying what he told us in Cancun, stating that he has never applied and obtained a single Nauru banking license. Of course, in Cancun, Whitmire told us he had sold 14 of them, which he now also denies.
How many have you sold?
How many have I sold?
Yeah.
Probably about 14 of my own.
The word that would be used in a court of law would be sham, that these are all sham transactions. They have no basis, no economic reality, only one purpose, and that's tax evasion.
Sort of sham banks.
No, they're not shams because they have licenses that allow them to operate.
From the government of Nauru?
From the government of Nauru, right.
You're going to sit here and say that's a real bank?
They're banks to the extent that they have a license and they're issued by that government. They have background checks and they have...
The government of Nauru does a thorough background check?
Yes, absolutely.
But we found that's another thing that's not true, at least according to what our undercover producers were told by Los Angeles tax lawyer Howard Fisher, who also spoke at the seminar in Cancun.
Nauru doesn't, to be frank, doesn't give a rat's you know what. They're doing this for fees.
Wait, what do you mean?
They don't care about the banking industry. They're giving out licenses for fees. There's no regulatory scheme here.
Fisher told us to be very careful before getting into offshore banks because the IRS regulations are very strict. Then, here's what Fisher said when we asked him about not declaring such a bank to the IRS.
Legally, it's a federal crime.
You don't think you can get away with that? You don't think you can just not declare it?
Do I think you can get away with it? Yes, I think there's a reasonable probability of getting away with it.
What's a reasonable probability?
I don't know. How big's your mouth? Most people get caught if you have a big mouth.
So say you keep your mouth shut, you don't have a big mouth. What's the chances of getting in trouble if you don't declare it?
If you're smart, next to none.
And then he reminded us again it's still a serious crime. Schneider and his financial empire have been under scrutiny around the world, from Scotland Yard to the IRS. But to date, none of his complicated tax schemes has ever resulted in any criminal charges against him.
Now, just using the law as it is right now, if you don't
Are you really? Is that all you're doing?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You're not twisting the law?
No,
To
absolutely.
help people avoid taxes?
Absolutely not.
For what Schneider is talking about to be legal, the American taxpayer would have to give up control of his money, something Schneider says his complicated maze of consultants and trustees and offshore banks accomplishes.
Now, this stuff isn't easy to understand. That chart...
But IRS consultant Blum says it's all really designed to hide the fact that the money belongs to and is under the control of an American taxpayer.
The reality here is you control your money, and that despite all of this wondrous stuff, at the end of the day, it's your stuff.
And you therefore owe taxes on it.
You owe taxes.
If you don't pay those taxes?
You don't pay those taxes, you're committing a crime in the United States.
Schneider told us he's well aware of the law and the key issue of control, and that he tells his clients they must give up control of their money.
We tell them that they're going to lose control of their assets in order to do this, because they're
That's what you say?
Yeah, absolutely.
Where y'all from?
New Jersey.
Oh, great.
But Schneider seemed to be saying something much different during a half-hour meeting in his Cancun hotel suite when he didn't know the cameras were rolling. Even though he at times hedged about it, he told our undercover producers, posing as prospective clients flat out, that they and any partners they brought in could maintain control of their money as consultants. The important thing here is control.
You get us to run it, or you tell us what you want to do.
But who controls it? You control it or we control it?
You control it, he said.
But you're managing it.
You tell us what you want as the consultant. You tell us what you want, and we plug in.
This is absolutely the evidence that this scam that he set up is nothing more than tax fraud. The truth is, you control it, you're liable for the tax.
Schneider became upset when we showed him what he had said to our undercover producers. That's you.
That's me. And maybe you're referring to, when we talk about control, the control of investment decisions, okay, which is something that you can do. And you're focusing your whole area of inquiry on this one point.
But isn't that the central point? Who controls it? You told me yourself it's not legal if the taxpayer controls it. Yet here on this tape. Mr. Schneider? Schneider came back briefly.
Right. If you read.
No, I want to ask you what you said there.
No, and I want you to address, what I write about, which is the issues regarding control and giving up control here.
What you write is one thing. What did you say on the tape?
I don't know what I said on the tape.
What, you want to see it again?
No, I understand that, but
my question to you again. Is it not true you're saying one thing in your book, in the public sessions, and quite another in the private consultations?
That's not true.
That's not true?
No. Everything that I say is entirely consistent.
Have you had trouble with the law before? This time, Schneider walked out for good. Several weeks later, Schneider's lawyers sent us a letter saying we didn't understand what Schneider was talking about, stating again that the control he was talking about had to do with the taxpayer's role as a consultant, not about actual control of the money. IRS consultant Jack Blum says it's all nonsense.
He's saying you control it. He's created exactly the conditions that require you to pay tax.
You can have a good time.
Every dollar that he saves his customers through this kind of scam is an extra dollar that some poor guy working on a factory assembly line is going to have to pay.
Thank you very much. I'll be back tomorrow to talk about my treasure chest of secrets. Thank you.
It goes on and on. Brian, what is the IRS doing about tax schemes like this?
Well, in the last week, the IRS has announced a crackdown on just such offshore banks and offshore trusts. They wanted to go after them and put them in court if they can and prove once and for all that such schemes are illegal. Of course, American tax law is notoriously complex and full of loopholes.
It sure is complicated, you're right. And it must be aggravating to people who pay their taxes.
That, and anybody who's ever been audited for a small deduction, to see these kinds of people get by, it's doubly irritating.
That's astounding, yes. Thank you, Brian.
Well, next, people obsessed with their looks. And sometimes it's more than vanity. It could be the sign of a bizarre condition that should be treated. Lynn Scher's report may describe someone you know. Stay with us.